Hello, fourth graders. So today we are actually not going to be creating artwork. We're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be taking a virtual trip to an art museum. What sorts of experiences does an in-person art museum provide that virtual ones do not provide? And then I also the reverse of that. What are things that we get virtually from a virtual art museum that they've created that we wouldn't have that same experience if we were to actually be there in the in-person art museum? The second question is, how have art curators changed their exhibitions, the in-person exhibitions, to become online ones? So lots of museums, especially right now during the pandemic, because a lot of us can't visit museums, we need to socially distance, have put a lot of their exhibitions online. So this is the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, which is in the Netherlands. And we are going to take a quick little virtual tour of this. We're mostly just going to do it through this video, but I'm also going to give you the link in case you guys want to look around in it. So let's take a look down here. We've got some different information that they have on here, different online exhibits. If we scroll down a little bit more, they have different categories that they fit his artwork into. There's a bunch of examples of his artwork, but what we're looking for is all the way down here before the map, the 4 museum views. So they have the ground floor, the first floor, the second floor, and the third floor. So let's go ahead and hop into the third floor, and it's going to open up a virtual version of the third floor of this art museum. So this is pretty cool. So as we're walking through here, I want you, virtually walking through here, I want you to be thinking about any museum or art museum that you may have been to. If you haven't been to one, then just imagine what it would be like to actually be in this museum versus how it actually is, which is just to be kind of virtually looking at it. So, of course, this may be easier to do if you have actually visited a museum, even if it wasn't an art museum before. Imagine what would be different about it. So let's go ahead and approach over here. I'm going to turn around. I can look at all these paintings. So you can see all the brush strokes in this painting. If I scroll in right here, I don't know if you'll be able to really read it, but there's some information they've got there. We can turn around. We can see even more stuff. So while we're looking around at these paintings, I'm just going to kind of keep talking to you. So think about, if you've ever been to a museum before, think about the sorts of things that you are able to do there. Of course, we see these big ropes right here that would keep you from getting too close and personal up with those paintings. They don't want you to touch them and get your oils from your fingers on them. But what sorts of other things do they provide? Like, let's step over here. I see this little screen. And I'm sure on here we aren't able to interact with whatever is on this screen, but I've been to a lot of art museums and different museums where they have interactive things. Sometimes they allow you to create your own artwork that looks something like these artworks. You can email it to yourself and print it out at home, that sort of thing. Sometimes they have things where they just give more information about the artist. They give lots of different in-depth experiences. What they also have here is this right here, I believe, is actually something where they would be talking to you if you were to pick up that little speaker and hold it up close to your ear. I'm sure that they would be talking to you all about what's happening in this timeline. So now that we've explored in here just a little bit, let's take a look back at what else they have, because that is the virtual museum tour. But what they also have provided for us are all of these images. And if I were to just click on one of them, it's going to blow it up and it's going to be nice and large. It gives me what the name of it is. I can even zoom into it. I can kind of scroll around it, zoom in, zoom back out. I can even view it in street view, which means viewing it in the environment that it lives in our virtual art museum. It'll tell me which floor it's on. It's on the first floor in the museum in real life. So this is something that's actually pretty cool that they've provided. So we can see, of course, they've listed that it's by Vincent van Gogh in a museum that isn't filled with just Vincent van Gogh. That would be a more useful thing to put what the artist's name was. And then it tells you it's from July 1890. This is something actually view in augmented reality that you could have an app for. So I'll just click on it. They have it in the App Store and in Google Play. It lets you see how artworks look in real size in front of you. So if you just install the app and then select the camera button, it's going to show you this, like where you can move it around and get really close to that artwork. So that's something that's pretty cool. I mean, when we were looking at what it would look like if you were to really be looking at this artwork, let's look down here. There's a big rope right here. And if we were really standing there in that museum, we wouldn't be able to get that close to that artwork. So there are some things about a virtual art museum that add a little bit more to the experience because you can get so close. You can really scroll in. You are completely in control of what you look at in that painting. I mean, I couldn't get this close. One of the museum curators would be telling me that I'm getting way too close to that painting if I were getting this close in person to it. So this is something that's really, really cool that they've added to the experience. However, with it being virtual, I'm not really getting that experience of walking around in this museum and really taking in the atmosphere and being surrounded by that artwork because all of this artwork isn't surrounding me right now. It's just in front of me. It's on my computer screen, like a video game. See when we zoom in on these, even though we can get closer to them, they're still pretty blurry because they are virtual. They're not the real thing. So that is something that we also miss out on a little bit is the quality of the artwork, especially these ones. You can tell it's got a reflection right there. These have glass over them, so the glare really affects what it is that you see. I'm just wanting you guys to kind of think about the differences between an in-person art museum and a virtual art museum. Think about what they have changed and what they had to do to make this art museum even in person. So they had to collect all of the artwork, be very, very careful with it. They had to lay it all out in a very specific fashion. They have it organized by dates here. You can see up here it says 1890. So all of these are going to be from around the same date. That's what the museum curators had to do. They've even got these over here are Japanese influences. They've organized all of these things. So all of this effort, and this is just one little room on the first floor that we're looking at right now. All of this effort that an art museum curator went through to set up this exhibition. Now that we've talked about that, think about now how they have changed this exhibition. Maybe they didn't change it physically. Maybe this is actually how it looks in real life if you were to go and visit it. But think about how they have brought this in-person art exhibition to be like in our own homes, to be something that you can visit virtually. Think about the differences that they have done. So they've clearly taken some sort of recording device and taken an image that's 360 from each and every angle here, but I can turn all the way around, just like in like a virtual reality. And then like we talked about earlier, think about how those differences change our experience with the artwork, change our experience with the art museum. If you've ever been to a museum or an art museum, maybe most of the time when you go to a museum, you can't touch things. But as we saw earlier, we saw the little screen that had something interactive on it that we couldn't see because we're in the virtual version. It's just a picture for us. But if we were there in person, we could have interacted with something on there and perhaps made our own artwork that is inspired by Vincent van Gogh's work. And then even if you think about other types of museums, like the Children's Museum, if you've ever been there, things where they do have interactive things where you can touch things, you can touch different sculptures and stuff like that. Think about how that is changed if that were to be made virtual. You wouldn't be able to interact with those things, right? So that's going to be a totally different experience. And even further, something that they have brought from this in-person art museum and brought to be a virtual, other than just a tour, is that they have all of this information. They have these different online exhibits that they have curated, that they have made. Which books did Vincent van Gogh read? Let's click on that and check out that story, that exhibition. And I can scroll down through here. It's giving me one of his paintings. This is something where we're getting higher quality images. They've taken really nice quality images on here, and we're getting information. So this is sort of like going to a museum and reading those little plaques that they have sitting next to the paintings, all the different information they have, except this is all virtual. You could do this sitting on your couch. So this is something really cool that is a totally different experience, but is something perhaps similar to what you might experience if you were to actually visit that museum. So now that we've explored a little bit in this virtual art museum of Vincent van Gogh's artwork, I want you to make a Flipgrid that has a link in the slideshow where you found this. There's a link to this virtual art museum if you want to check it out and explore a little bit more if you're interested in that. That's totally optional. But the Flipgrid is also linked in there underneath that. And it's marked clearly. When you open that, I'm going to have these questions written out, but I'm just going to say them aloud to you right now so you can read them this way. I want you to answer these questions with your Flipgrid. What sorts of experiences does an in-person art museum provide that virtual ones do not provide? What things can you experience and do and see and possibly even feel and touch in an in-person art museum? What are the things that you would do and see that you would not see if you were doing it the way we just did virtually? And then I also want you to answer the reverse of that. What are things that we get virtually from a virtual art museum that they've created that we wouldn't have that same experience if we were to actually be there in the in-person art museum? The second question is, how have art curators changed their exhibitions, the in-person exhibitions, to become online ones? So what have art curators, those are people that run the museums and set up the exhibitions, how have they changed or brought the exhibitions that they have in their in-person art museums and brought them to this virtual format? What have they added to them? What have they taken away? What sorts of things are changed? And these questions, there's not one single right or wrong answer. Just kind of in general, name one or two things for each of those questions that comes to your mind. All right. Thanks, artists.